Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tears in Tool Talk, a podcast dedicated to celebrating women who are reconnecting with their color and magic from within the struggles of everyday life. I am so excited to have here with us today Emmy Wu, a friend and someone that I have admired for some time now. So, Emmy, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I am a storyteller, a videographer, and a video marketing strategist. I help artists, coaches, and messengers to reach more people so they can create a bigger positive impact using the power of video. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I love to follow your work on Instagram and Facebook especially. So thank you for being here with us today. We start every Tears and Tool Talk show out with a Tears and Tool moment. These are called the even when, especially then moments in life. They're your tears and tool that's happening presently. And so I reached out ahead of time and I asked you to think about that question. And I would love for you to share with viewers your even when, especially then.
So I had to definitely do some thinking around this because as much as I would say, yeah, I'm always positive. There's always the inner rainbow. I think the reality of being a woman, being human even, and particularly for being a business owner, it is a constant practice to look within. So I would say that I tend to always look for that rainbow, to look for that silver lining, even in my darkest hours. And while I might not see it right away, I know that practice has been absolutely transformational in how I just approach life and how I see situations. And it just, in the moment, reassures me that, it's okay. It's not as big of a deal as it might feel in the moment. And once I pass through that, it's like, yeah, there is always something bigger at play here. And I can lean into that and trust that.
Wow. Yes, I especially then, all of that makes so much sense. And again, is we were just talking before we came on live, so down to earth and really making space for all of those feelings, I think. Which brings me to your beautiful photos, your beautiful words, and when you submitted your photos and your little essay part, I remember looking at them and thinking, oh my gosh, we could all just be like sitting in your living room with you while you were taking, it was just so real. You have the mask on in one of your photos. We were talking a little while ago about how your cat makes an appearance. And I just think it was really easy for people that were following the project to connect with you in that space. So we would love to hear your experience from the moment that skirt showed up to the moment that you sent it on to the next participant.
Yeah. So, well, first off, I was surprised at how small that skirt can actually be packed down to in the box when it arrived. I was like, oh, it's a pretty small box considering I knew how giant that tutu was.
Yes.
And so when I opened it up, it was like, like when you see all the clowns that keep coming out of that tiny car. That's kind of what it felt like. I'm like, I just kept pulling and pulling. And then before me, it was like this giant, beautiful piece of art. And what struck me immediately was how beautiful and magical the skirt was. And yet the reality of where so many people are in the world right now is darkness, is struggle, is moving through a time of uncertainty with COVID. And so I wanted to address that, but not necessarily in a way that I wanted to do it in respect of that skirt, to highlight what it is that we all as humans, as people, have innately within us, regardless of what the situation is, regardless of what hardships we go through, that we still, even when we don't recognize it, have this rainbow behind us, supporting us, around us. And it really is, how do we open up ourselves to it, and how do we choose to perceive the situation that we're in? And so I included the mask, and obviously I had to, stay in my home to shoot the photographs. We were in like full force lockdown at that time. I thought about going to a park, but I don't know, it's a big skirt. So I felt I could do more, just, being at home. And being a videographer, even that process was a bit challenging for me, because I'm used to being able to move up close and really capture exactly the images that I want, with my clients that I'm shooting, or, in a scenario. Doing a self-shot portraiture shoot, I did not have that liberty or that freedom. It was set up on a tripod, or, balanced on pillows, or however I needed that shot to look, with a remote, doing, snapping the photos itself. And so it was a moment where the roles had switched. I was no longer the seer, but I was the one being seen. And it did bring up, these feelings of insecurity of being on camera as opposed to being behind the camera. And at the same time, I think for the work that I do in supporting business owners and so many women in owning their voice and feeling confident on camera, I was like, well, this is an opportunity for me to really walk the walk and just do the thing with like zero, expectation, or, this clinging on to it has to like look a certain way. So I shot several different kind of poses and kind of scenes, I guess you can say, and ranging in emotion from kind of serious and contemplative to fun and playful. That's where Milo, my cat, kind of came into play. And the interesting thing was, I felt in looking at the photos afterwards, and maybe it was because of the times with COVID, that I felt like the more serious ones with the mask, in contrast with this beautiful rainbow skirt, actually made a bigger statement, a visual statement, than if I were to just, play along and like just have like the fun shots. I think it brought a layer of, how do I even explain this? It's like, yes, we have this skirt. We know that this is beautiful and fun and, luxurious, but how do we bring in the seriousness? How do we bring in the scary parts, the uncomfortable parts, the reality that many of us, don't want to necessarily face, but we are facing in this time. And so I was really happy with those shots in particular, and just really grateful to have this opportunity, because not only was I able to make a visual statement, I was able to kind of practice what I preach and become a subject myself.
Very cool. Yeah, the photos do have that sort of contrast, the serious and the playful, and I was glad that you included both of them. I thought that was an important part of sort of telling your story of where you were in that exact moment. So thank you for sharing your heart and your vulnerability.
Yeah.
Super appreciated. I know that a little bit of the story that you had sent over, the essay portion of the project, mentioned that rainbows have been showing up in your life lately, and I guess this would be a rainbow showing up. The actual Tears and Tulle movement is like a rainbow that's showing up. But I would love to hear why you said yes to the project, and a little bit more about the words that you had included with your photos.
Yeah. So, well, why I said yes, because I love you. I love you, your work, and just the message behind this movement. I think it's so beautiful. It's so meaningful and so needed. And
Thank you.
yeah, of course. I think it's funny because almost like that saying, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And in the back of my mind, I had this anticipation that this giant rainbow skirt is coming to me. And so I was kind of like percolating, what would my statement be? Like, what would my commentary be in this age of lockdown? You know, like, how could I talk about brightness and happiness and cheerfulness and fun when that wasn't necessarily the mood and that wasn't necessarily the feeling that everybody had. And yet a few interesting things happened. I think it was the day before or maybe 2 days before the skirt actually arrived, and I was already kind of like looking out for it in the mail. We had a giant rainbow here. So it was like, rainbows have always had a special meaning for me, you know, with loved ones who have passed. It, like, giant double, triple rainbows would just appear out of nowhere. And it's just always had a special place in my heart that was like, there's something bigger. There's magic here. There's something looking out for you. So you don't have to worry about all the details. That was one. I also started to feel this inkling of just like wanting to draw and like color, and I don't know why that came about, because I mean, I don't really color much, you know, and so bringing my watercolors and my pencil crayons, you know, back into how I passed time during lockdown became an aspect of how I could bring color and exploration and play within these situations where normally there wouldn't be very much, you know, play. And just funny little coincidences, like, you know, seeing somebody wearing a rainbow shirt, or, you know, and so it was like, to me, these little reminders of like, yeah, there's this rainbow skirt, this project, but also remember the bigger significance of knowing that there's always something at your back, and don't ever forget that.
Wow. Yes. That's beautiful. What you're saying now is beautiful. Just like the story you told is so beautiful, and real and relatable again.
Yeah.
So I am wondering who might be inspiring you these days. I know that for me, I'm absolutely obsessed with Glennon Doyle's new book called Untamed. I'm just one of the other participants in the project said, every word in that book is highlightable. And I went, highlightable? And so I got it on Audible and then listened to it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, every part of this is rewindable. So then we had the highlightable and the rewindable. And I just think that powerful women, powerful people have the ability to really sort of get in this space with us and help us to grow and learn and expand. So that's who I'm reading right now, but I'm wondering who is inspiring you, especially with the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world right now. I'm really curious to the answer to that.
I need to get that book too. It's been coming up in my Audible feed. So I'm like, okay, I need to get that soon. You know who has really inspired me is Rachel Rogers. She is she does many things. She comes from a background in law. So she was a lawyer, an entrepreneur, and she has started she's been more vocal for sure in the recent weeks with George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, in really speaking up for the Black community. And I think that where she went even one step further that like really caught my eye as a woman who is like just stepping into being brave, into stepping being bold and courageous, is that she was part of Marie Forleo's B School, as many of us are, and in the alumni group. And I guess what had happened was there were some alumni, Black women, who were talking about, you know, what was happening in the world, and they were silenced in the group by Marie herself, and I think her team as well. So, and that, you know, obviously this caused an uproar, but the way she handled it, she did a live stream talking about why this is not okay, which I think was a really important step, because instead of just, you know, reacting, she really like explained why this is not okay and how this continues to support racism. It supports the silencing of people. And then she went on to create a town hall a live stream, which was like, I think a 2 or 3 hour event with other Black and white and people of color business owners, talking about what it means to really be an anti-racist business. And I think we just need more of those leaders who are helping us to define what does it mean to take a stance, but further than that, what does it mean to actually walk your walk? And because when you step into a role of leadership, it's not always going to be an easy thing. Like, oh, I just decide, and then everything, you know, is sunshine and rainbows, so to speak, right? It's like you will be met by challenges that almost force you to really own this new position that you're stepping into. And I think that she just did it with so much grace and bravery, but also taking what is anger and rage, but then channeling it in a way that was really educational and empowering, and that rallied other business owner, regardless of their color of skin, into a movement that betters our society as a whole.
Wow, I'm gonna have to try and find that live feed.
Yeah, I can share it with you afterwards.
Yes, I was so impressed. My daughter and I went to, I some friends and I are organizing. We're having a protest this Saturday, so just coming up in a couple of days. But I was so impressed. We went to a neighboring town protest, where everyone's, you know, has the masks on, and there's the passerby, and there's different people saying different things, and there was a group of young kids that the megaphone ended up getting passed to, and I was so impressed by the calm and the grace and the love that they were giving the people that were shouting out hurtful or hateful things. And one guy, I remember him, he just had the megaphone up to his mouth, and he said, I hope you see me soon. He said, I hope you see me soon, as they were shouting and going by. And that, it just reminds me of what you're saying, like that, it's just so inspiring to see how people are handling these situations, and how they are moving the rest of us to make real change, and to keep our foot on the gas, and to just keep moving, you know. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's so important right now. I really,
It's like, yeah, it's like situations like this really shows a person's true colors, right? And almost as a metaphor to a rainbow as well. It's like a rainbow is created because of droplets of water that hit sunlight in just like this right angle that creates this, you know, magnificent display. If the angles were off, or the droplets were too big, or, you know, like, that rainbow wouldn't exist. And so I think it's similar to where we are as a society right now. It's like we're trying to find our angles, And when we're pushed into these situations, sometimes it forces us to shift and become a brilliant rainbow in ourselves, and also be able to recognize what it means for us when somebody else is, you know, being a rainbow, or like being somebody who really stands out in their own right.
Yeah, it reminds me of that Maya Angelou quote that's be the rainbow in someone else's dark. Like, so I feel like if we do set these examples and just do the best we can, and yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. Thank you for sharing. I can't believe we are already like at time. I feel like we're sitting here with our tea having a little girl talk. So I would love for you to tell listeners where they can find you in the world and what you might have going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So people can find me at emmywoo.com. And I also have a Facebook group called Video Visibility Mastery. That's usually where I'm hanging out the most, and, you know, doing live trainings and live streams in that group. So if you want to hang out, that's where you'll find me.
Very cool. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today, Emmy.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I had a blast.